Welcome to the Ahern video podcast. Today I really want to talk about beginning the process of emotionally preparing yourself to sell your business. I receive telephone calls daily and emails daily from potential sellers that say, Andy, can you help me sell my company? And I categorically say, no, I can't help you sell your company, but I can prepare you for the most important part of that process, and that is to emotionally prepare yourself to let go. They say, well, what do you mean by that? And I say, in my practice, we have lots of clients that are looking for opportunities. If there's a cultural fit, if there's an operational fit, if there's an emotional fit, an ethical fit. But the first thing a seller has to do is really emotionally prepare themselves to let go. And that sounds like a very easy process, but it's not. You know, every seller that ever calls me says, well, if I hit a home run, then I'm ready to retire. Well, what does a home run mean? Are you going to get more than what the market's willing to pay? The answer is no. So the first thing I go through is, okay, what's your plan? Well, my plan is to retire and travel the rest of my life. Well, I can tell you that I just came back from a 10-day vacation and I almost went nuts. 7 days was enough for me. Even my wife said, with all the kids out of the house, we need to go back to work. And I think the point to this example is very simple. You've got to get up every day and you have to have a purpose. And everybody says they have a purpose. And let me give you an example. I won't mention a name, but a very good friend of mine was the president of a very large trucking company, and he had accumulated a lot of assets, and net worth rather, and he was ready to retire at 59, and I said, don't. He says, don't tell me how to live my life. And he retired. Lasted 3 weeks. Because his whole life surrendered around a certain routine, and you just can't cut it off. The other thing you have to realize is letting go is not about the end of your life coming to an end, but it's a decision on what the next chapter of your life is going to be. Now think about that. It's not the end of your life, but you're getting rid of one chapter and you're starting another. What people don't understand is once you remove yourself from your particular industry, if most of your friendships are in that industry, a lot of those friendships are going to dissipate. People say all the time, well, that's not going to happen. Well, it is going to happen. Why? Because you don't have anything in common anymore. You don't go to any of the trade association meetings. You don't do any of the networking. And your lifestyle is now different than theirs. So you have to take all these things in consideration. Oh, about 2 years ago, a good friend of mine says, I'm retiring. And I said, I think you should talk it over with your wife. What does my retirement have anything to do with talking it over with my wife? I said, because it also impacts your wife. She's used to her own schedule. She's used to her own space. So don't just retire. So he took my advice. He went and talked to his wife, and she says, I love you dearly. We've been married for 40 plus years, but I want you in the house every day. I want to be able to do what I'm used to doing. I want to be able to have a certain amount of independence. Not that I don't love you, but I have my own routine. What you have to decide is if you decide to retire, number one, I want to make sure that we have the financial security. That's your responsibility. But number two, you have to have something to do. I have created my world. I have created my activity. I have created my friends. Do I want to travel some? Yes. Do I want to travel 100% of the time? No. Do I want to be away from my children all the time? No. And so that was a rude awakening for him, because he just assumed, okay, I'm now going to step into a dimension I was never in before. My wife's going to embrace it, and everything's going to be all right. Well, fortunately, they had that kind of relationship where they could communicate with each other. I had another situation where the wife finally said, get your proverbial butt out of the house. So you have to decide what's going to be the next phase of your life. I'm a proponent that you can never retire until you physically can't. But I am a proponent that you can take a step back, you can take time off, you can work part-time, you can learn a new trade. But you have to keep your mind active. My grandfather lived to be, I think, 88 years old. And He wasn't really my grandfather. He was my step-grandfather. But he embraced one thing to me, and he said, anytime the grass is under your feet, son, it's a great day. And the other thing he embraced, or the other thing he taught me was that never let your mind wander. Because if your mind isn't active, then your mind is not productive. So if your mind is not productive and your mind isn't active, then what happens? One of my best friends was a guy by the name of Malcolm Strauss, and he lived to be 93 years old. And Malcolm lost his wife after 57 years. And he said he'd never get married again, but he kept active. He dated socially. He worked out every day. He drove his own car until one day cancer consumed him and he was gone in 3 months. But he had a great outlook on life. But he had the next phase of his life planned out. So what we can bring to a seller is very simple. We can tell you what the market's willing to pay at any given time for your business. And we can make sure that you're emotionally prepared to let go. And if and we can tell you whether it's the proper time based upon your desires, whether you should even entertain talking to any type of buyer. Because market conditions really follow what your desires are. Everybody says, well, the market's hot, so I should get out now. You should want to get out of the market when you are ready to get out of the market and you prepared yourself emotionally to get out of the market. Till next time, thank you for attending the podcast.